I'm Dean Newlund, and welcome to Leadovation. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. This podcast is dedicated to the art and science of innovative leadership. Through insightful interviews with industry experts, I bring you cutting-edge strategies and experiences of innovative leadership, helping you think differently, act strategically, and achieve remarkable results. Join me as I provide insights and tools that empower you to make smarter decisions, forge meaningful relationships. Welcome to Leadovation. Do you ever feel like you're running faster just to stay in place? Well, you're not alone. In today's world of constant pressure and shrinking resources, burnout has become the price too many high-achieving people pay for success. But what if slowing down were actually the key to performing better? In this episode of Leadovation, we explore how balance isn't something you find, it's something you choose. You'll hear how pushing through chaos and overwork can actually keep you stuck, and how small shifts in reflection, boundaries, and purpose can transform not just your work, but your life. If you've ever said, well, I'll rest when things calm down, this conversation is for you. Tune in to learn how to slow down without losing your edge and discover a more sustainable path to success. Listen now to From Burnout to Balance, how high achievers can slow down without losing their edge on the Leadovation podcast. All right, Kim, nice having you from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I know that you and I sort of share a lot of similar areas to focus on. And we were talking about, obviously, this idea around how do we become more balanced, more focused? How do we continue to be successful without being burned out? And it seems like, just to kind of tee you up, there's a lot of headwinds that is creating that burnout. And it seems like we have, in certainly this economy, the job market is getting more and more sparse. Companies are needing to do more with less. We're in uncertain political and economic times. And so the pendulum seems to have swung back to the employer, versus right after COVID with the Great Resignation, it kind of swung more towards the employee. Like, I can go wherever I want. I'm going to go to greener pastures. See you later. But now people are hanging out longer, and people are staying in their jobs. And that might mean now I've got to do 2 jobs versus 1. So how does a person manage the increased expectations, lower resources, at the same time they want to be focused, they want to be successful, but at the same time, we don't want to be burned out?
Yeah, such a good question. So many great points. Well, first of all, when I think of the word balance, and, when I coach to it, we talk a lot about getting some clarity around what balance means to you personally without comparison. And obviously we can get in the comparison trap all the time because we've got social media and everything else going on around us a million miles an hour. And balance is also a feeling. It's like when people say, I'm overwhelmed. Well, are you really overwhelmed, or do you just feel overwhelmed? And sometimes it's hard to talk about feelings, especially as high achievers, which all your listeners are. I'm not it's one of those things as a high D on the DISC profile.
Yes.
And as a leader, I've had to realize, okay, we actually do have feelings. We don't just check things off the list. So first of all, I would identify, what does balance mean to you? And recognize when you are in it. I think we don't always recognize when we're in it. You just recently interviewed somebody that talked about slowing down, slow down to speed up, or what. That was a really good interview, by the way.
Thank you.
I talk a lot about that. When we do slow down, we can recognize when we're in the balance. Sometimes we don't even realize that we're sitting at the dinner table eating with our family, hopefully not with our cell phones at the table, and we don't even realize we're in balance. I've chosen that family as a priority, but I don't even know when I'm in it. And so I think that I'm always feeling unbalanced, but we're actually in it. Like right now, you and I are experiencing balance. You have a passion for what you do. What did you say podcast wise? 280 some? Like, I don't even know how many people have that, but not that many. Most of the time, I think it's like under 20. Everybody wants to start the podcast, but very few get past like 10 or 20.
True.
This is balance. And so if we take a moment to realize that we're in it right now, then we won't be so hard on ourselves thinking that we're never in balance. So that's how I talk about the B word.
The B word sounds like a swear word, but in a good way. So it sounds like what you're saying, and I would agree with you. So I'm sort of teeing you up for this, but balance is not only an environmental condition, but an intention.
Yeah, such an intention.
Can we choose balance when the external world is out of kilter? I remember when I used to work years and years and years ago through high school and college, I was waiting tables. And the external world was extremely out of balance because of the demands of cooking staff and, the people that I was serving. And it was just sort of high chaos. And yet I found that if I could get myself into sort of an inner sense of balance, an inner peace, I could multitask and flow through all of this external chaos and do pretty well. But if I started to mirror my external environment, I would probably be in a puddle somewhere, just burned out, right? So what is your take on all that?
Yeah, well, for sure. And obviously the timing, no matter when you're listening to this, we're, nearing the end of 2025. We've gone through a lot as a community, as a society, everything that we've gone through. So you are correct. If we choose to have all of the external, circumstances weigh on us heavily and take over our mindset and our balance, as we're talking about balance, then of course we can certainly, curl up and, try to just take a nap around it versus taking action. And so usually, what I talk about when we're feeling that way is just that, taking action towards the intention based on what's important to you personally and professionally. And it is personally as well as professionally, because we know all of those areas of our life tie together. We're whole beings, right? We're not just at work being the CEO. We're also mothers and fathers and sisters and friends and community givers and all of those things that make us whole beings. And so it's really just taking a moment to identify in all of the areas of our lives, what's most important to you.
So Kim, why this topic? I mean, you're a keynote speaker, you write books, you coach people, you've had success that you've created brought to you. Why is this? Because before we started this conversation, I said, it's okay. Hey, nice to meet you. What do you really feel is the thing that you love to talk about when you do keynote speaking? And this was the topic. But I didn't really ask, and I'm going to ask you now. Why is this the one that is so personal to you over so many others out there that one could say is equally as valuable?
Well, because I, for many years, did not experience balance. So I come from a background of being in the real estate space for 25 years. The first 15 years I was in sales. The last 10 years I was the CEO of multi-million-dollar brokerages. So one of the brokerages that I built here in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area started with 43 agents and one location. And when I retired from that role almost 3 years ago, we had multiple locations and over 700 agents. And so I was part of that whole growth and inception of that particular company. And what had happened was I ended up getting in a traumatic skiing accident out in Breckenridge, Colorado. I was there with my groom of now 29 years and my youngest daughter at that time. My oldest daughter was back in Wisconsin, and I ended up falling, and in normal 18-year-old fashion, my daughter Snapchatted a picture to her sister and was like, ha ha ha, mom's down. Well, mom wasn't getting back up, and I ended up breaking my tibia, my fibia, my ankle, and, was skirted off the mountain and all of that. From that experience, though, I was forced to slow down. And forced to slow down really for the first time since my leadership role that I had been in for 10 years. And I was starting to feel the stress and the burnout, but didn't realize it till I was forced to slow down. And when I slowed down, that's when I really took some time to reflect on what do I want to do with the second half of my best life. I was knocking on the age of 50. I'm now 52. And really it was like, what do I want to do with myself? And that's when I ended up retiring out of that role and started my own company 3 years ago. But it was the force of the slowdown that really made me realize how much I was addicted to drama and chaos and being the fixer of the drama all the time. It didn't realize how much that was actually affecting my own well-being and my own balance. And so that's really, Dean, the truth of it, is that's why that happened. And then I, after starting my company, decided to study what that really meant.
So I thank you for that. That's kind of a tough story to tell. Do you feel that had you learned what you know now about balance, that you could have done that prior life without being so addictive to that chaos?
Wow, what a good question. Probably not, right? It's like anybody who failure brings success or triumph brings success, or as if we've ever gone through a health situation, probably not. I'd probably still be doing that and still somewhat, I would say, questioning what I was doing, or I wouldn't necessarily say actually crying behind closed doors, but stress behind closed doors, and all of those things that happen when we don't know anything differently.
You mentioned the word addiction, though, which is an interesting word. It's almost like to say, if I'm an addict to alcohol, do I really want to be a bartender? And you might go, maybe not a good idea. And yet, of course, there are probably many bartenders out there who are on AA and who are clean and who still serve drinks to others, even though they're closest to the very thing that caused them to be an addict in the first place. So it kind of goes back to this idea that I'm looping back to, which is balance a function of the environment in which you choose, or is balance a function of the attitude that you take?
Well, I would say today, the attitude that I take, because let's not pretend that starting a business from square one, could cause unbalance, right? I mean, I'm in a situation right now where my family does depend on my income. And when I sat down with my husband and said, hey, honey, I think I want to leave the CEO position where I have a salary and benefits and all of these things to go start something where there's zero guarantee. Now, granted, we had been there before when I was 100% commission, but we hadn't been there for 10 years. And having 2 kids in college and all of the lifestyle that we built, like, my income matters. So certainly there could have been, or there could be right now, that same sort of addiction. I think the difference is now, with my reflection and studying, I have learned how to control my focus of my time. I've learned how to breathe. I've learned how to pause, listen. So I'm doing a lot more of pausing and listening and reflecting, and still having what I would consider the same type of success, but really in a less chaotic way, because I am being purposeful about how I spend my time.
So was there this isn't a coaching call for you, right? But I'm curious about your story because I think there's something that we can learn from you. What was the significance of the event being a skiing accident versus tripping in the shower. Why skiing? Was that the metaphor that brought you to this particular awareness?
Yeah. Wow. Well, to be honest, what had happened, a piece that I did not tell in the beginning, and I love that we're going here, is within 7 days of that accident, I was actually back to work. So I flew home.
With all these broken bones
home,
that you just talked about.
Yes. What was told, that kept being reminded by my surgeon that this wasn't just an accident. She had used the word traumatic. She said, you have to understand this was a traumatic accident. And that you are going to have no weight bearing for 10 weeks, but within 7 days I was on a Zoom. Now granted, I wasn't in the office, but I was on a Zoom leading a call to hire an assistant for myself, somebody who was going to be my assistant. But what had happened, Dean, is my accident was on January 29th, something of that sort. It took me until March 1st to approach the investors and ask for a leave of absence. So the gift and the curse was that I worked for a small, big company, and it wasn't like we had departments, right? I was the CEO, we had a CFO, and then a couple other people, and then, yes, 183 real estate agents, but it's a small, big company. It's a very small leadership staff. And so it's no fault of them, no fault of me, but I just went back to work as best as I could. And then when I wasn't performing at the level that I was used to, that's when I had the breakdown where I was like, I am not okay with this. Like, I did not realize that I wasn't okay not performing based on what your expectations are. And so I went to the investors that late in the game and said, I need a 6-week leave of absence. I should have taken it from the beginning, but I didn't. And then during that 6 weeks, I didn't know what to do. It was almost like my body, as they talk about your nervous system, it was like my body didn't even know. It's kind of like when we go on vacation, right? As high achievers, and for whatever reason, it takes us 2 to 3 days to even really be on vacation, right?
Yep.
Sometimes it takes longer. I mean, a lot of my clients, I'll be like, you have to at least vacation for 10 days because you don't even know how to turn off the first 5 days. You're not really resting. So it was that same sort of thing. I did not know what to do. It was like I had no idea. And so for your listeners, for anybody who's maybe going through this or struggling, one of the things that I did do is during my self-reflection time, I was like, I'm going to go visit myself. Like, who am I really? And what are my natural talents and strengths? And what am I good at? And, what do I want to continue doing? And I mean, I dug out every assessment I ever took about myself, from the DISC to the strength finders to the Enneagram. And whether you believe in those or not, it doesn't matter. It's a tool, right? It doesn't mean you're in that box. Like you're only a high D or only a high I, right? Or you're not good at it's a tool. So I read through the tools, but actually process the words versus skimming them to then really take time to nurture and love myself and rediscover what I was naturally really good at. So then I could make almost like a strategic, if you will, decision on what I wanted to do next.
Great. I love it. I love the way you took what was kind of a tragedy and turned it into a transformation, which sometimes we don't do. We just go right back on the horse and find out that we are repeating the same patterns before. So great for you. Is there something about skiing though? Because I'm a skier. I've been skiing since I was a kid. I see things in metaphor, and I see my body as a placeholder for a lot of metaphor. It teaches me things. So for example, my wife and I were talking just recently about the fact that she had all of a sudden this unusual pain in her back. And as we kind of processed that, we found out that she wasn't feeling supported in the situation during which this pain emerged. So if you look at Louise L. Hay's work and other people's work, you know that the body is a teacher of external, internal lessons, and that the body will sometimes show up in a certain way to teach you need more support, or the reason why you have this ailment is because of the fact that something is going on. So with skiing, I can only imagine. I have not had a serious skiing accident, but there are times when I am skiing fast that I realize that I'm not fully present in the speed of my skiing, that it's gotten out from under me. Like I am, think about the metaphor for that it's going beyond where my own sense of self is, that I'm going faster than I am with that. This is really hard to describe. So I realized at some points I go, I better slow down so that I am fully on those skis versus letting them sort of take off on their own, because I know that at some point, if I continue to do that, I am prone for an accident. So I guess I'm curious whether or not there was something about the skiing aspect versus football or any other sport that spoke to you.
Yeah, I wish there was, because that would be pretty cool. No, there actually wasn't. I mean, to be quite honest.
But you got tremendous value in the back end of it.
Yes, I would say that, And I'm not back to skiing and, all of that. But, no, I did not feel any of that. I mean, the only thing I felt was anger towards my husband, because I was the only person that rented skis. So I'm blaming it on the rental versus my own skis. So I'm like, hey, honey, lessons learned here, because we're going to be heading out to Steamboat again. But I won't be skiing, but my whole family will be. I'm like, nobody is renting skis. We're all going to bring our own. Can I ask you,
why are you not skiing?
That's a great question, Dean.
Your husband called me up before this. He wanted me to ask you that.
I'll be perfectly honest. I never really loved skiing. I took on skiing when I met my husband. So I took on skiing as an adult. So in my 20s, we decided together that we were going to raise our girls skiing, because it's a lifelong sport. It's a beautiful way to bring up a family and all of that. But I was more of the type of person, we'd go on a trip and I would ski one day, they would ski 3. I'd go to yoga instead, or I'd go shopping. And so it's not my passion. I don't love it. I love being in the mountains, so I'm going to always travel with them. But I also don't feel a need like some of the other things in my life to go prove, if that makes sense. Like I had to prove I could go back to yoga, right? I don't need, because that's a passion of mine. But I don't need to prove anything with skiing, because I didn't really love it that much.
It was never you in the first place.
No.
So the skis kicked you off.
Yeah, exactly. There you go, Dean. There's the metaphor.
You're like a horse. You didn't really want to do this anyway. We're going to cause you to get into a little accident so you can get back to where you really belong. Stop pretending to be a skier.
For the ladies out there, I'll be perfectly honest. I'm always like, what am I, a Michelin man? Like, can we make these things more stylish?
No, I know. Well, you can spend a lot of money on certain high-end coats and jackets and so forth. But so I have 2 other questions that come to mind as you're talking here. And this is really quite an interesting discussion here, because we're looking at burnout, which in some ways can be by some an overused term. We hear it all the time.
Yeah.
But I think you're kind of bringing into this conversation another viewpoint on it. So do you feel, maybe what's the better question? How do different generations, because now we are probably for the first time maybe in history, seeing that we have in our workforces several stacks of generations all working together, whereas before it may have just been 1 or 2. Now we've got 3 or 4. We got baby boomers all the way down to Gen Xers, Gen Yers, Gen Zers, Gen Aers. We starting the whole alphabet all over again. Are you noticing a different approach to this topic around burnout based on the generation of that person? And if so, what do you see?
Yeah. Well, for sure. I mean, as a Gen Xer,
that was sort of like, duh!
I mean,
jeez, Dean, could you come up with a better question? Duh!
I mean, I just think of my generation, which was like, you just work, right? Like you prove your worth based on the grind, and versus my girls who are in their 20s, where it's, we kind of make fun of my one daughter who's 24. Don't get me wrong, she has a great job. She's a pediatric nurse, but she talks about burnout, and my husband and I are always like, you don't even know what burnout is. Give me a break. So yes,
I have that with my son too.
Can be, you and I can laugh at it and be like, you don't have a clue, right? And
but so these kids, your kids, my kids, other kids, are we, sorry for interrupting, are they approaching burnout in a way that is a reaction to what they've seen us go through?
Yeah.
Hell no, I don't want to be like mom and dad. They look stressed out every time they come home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ergo, I'm going to try a different path.
Right. For sure. I mean, and I think that can be healthy. I mean,
yeah.
I think there's definitely, we can be better. Our age demographic can be better about embracing calm and peace and slow down and not having to work 24/7. So it truly is, let's be honest, it's about finding the balance. Again, when we go back to what is important to you, like, let's not pretend, if we're really just going to talk about work, let's not pretend that we don't need to make money to fund the things, right? And I don't mean things as an overly materialistic, but it could be time on the mountain, right? Like, that's an expensive sport. Well, we have to make money in order to support the experience that we want to have as a family. So it's also really identifying what are your values, what is important to you, and how can we tie the two together when it comes to you making money and also finding the balance. And so, to ignore that, right? Those are some of the conversations we have with our daughters as well, is, okay, how do we tie the two together so that you can live your best for the love of life, whatever that might mean to you.
Right. It's a personal answer to that question. So I'm getting that we're sort of talking about that balance is a function of the environment in which we choose to be in, the choices we make around where we surround ourselves, right? But also the attitudes in which we have entering into life, right? It's kind of a combination of both. And here's what brings it home for me. My wife and I made this crazy decision about 10 years ago to move from Phoenix, Arizona, where we had a lot of friends, a lot of family, couple houses, all the business contacts were down there. And we said, let's move up to Bend, Oregon. What the hell, right? And it was a huge move. And there's been, it took a long time to make it happen. But why did we do that? In essence, because we wanted more balance, because we wanted the 4 seasons, because we wanted to be around nature more than we were down in Phoenix. And so we did that. So on the other side of this equation, and I'm trying to find a way to articulate this, I've noticed some employees who get attracted to certain companies because the company's culture seems to promise balance. And yet when they find out that when we get into that environment, we're just dealing with human nature, and sometimes it's pretty dysfunctional. So almost like we hope that the external world will change our internal world. And when we find out it influences, but it still comes back down to us. We have to make that choice. What's your thoughts on all that?
Oh gosh. Yes, that is so good. It's so true.
Yeah. I hope everybody who's watching this on YouTube saw the look on your face. That was like, I don't know, like you just had a good bite of a meal or something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is true. Yeah, and I mean, I don't know what to say. First off, the majority of the people that I coach are entrepreneurs or 100% commissioners, or they are solopreneurs, right? They run their own business. So I have very different conversations with them versus if somebody's working corporately and they think that they've joined a company who promised their so-called good life / balance, right? It's a little bit harder to control because what do you have control of? Certainly you could have conversations with your leadership around it. And so it's hard for me to answer that question because of my experience and it not being corporate, but I can certainly answer it when we're talking about solopreneurs or small business owners who they personally want to have that, or they want to create a culture for their small business that way, right? It's holding true to your word. And what does that mean? And let's be honest, Dean. I mean, all humans want to be, right? They want to be seen, heard, and validated. That's really what it boils down to. And so if we're talking to leaders, which is who your audience is, it's like, as a leader, whether you're a leader of one or you're a leader of many, how do you make those in your world feel like they're seen, heard, and validated? And at the same time, obviously doing their job based on, the, parameters of why you hired them.
Yeah. You bring up an interesting thought here. You're talking about these sole entrepreneurs, these individual business owners, and my mind immediately went to that environment, that startup starting from the beginning kind of encourages a person, rightfully so, to do everything. I'm cleaning the toilets and I'm also having business meetings and everything in between. And I remember those days, right? And when we started off, I did it all, right? And then my wife started getting involved. It wasn't until I started to pay more attention to what balance meant to me. Need to take a vacation every year. Didn't do that for a long time. Need to hire somebody to do my calendaring. Need somebody else to do my bookkeeping because I need balance. That the business started to grow because I'm no longer stuck in this sort of cesspool issue of having to do it all, which ironically kept me from growing. And I'm still seeing some of that mentality, even in large organizations. I was just talking to somebody today about this, that she was sort of working her department like an entrepreneur. And I said, you need to hand off, develop other people so that you can be more strategic. Otherwise, you're going to continue to operate like an entrepreneur. And the byproduct is, why you're calling me is because you feel burned out.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah. And it just, it's also, it's just the basics, even in your own household, of being able to ask for help, right? I always talk about the 4 Ds with my people: the do, the delay, or the do, the delegate. Thank you, AI. There's a lot of things we can now be delegating with AI. So the do, the delegate, the delay, and the dump, the 4 Ds. And so that can translate to everything, no matter the size of your company. It can translate to personally, professionally, everything. And even when we talk about delegate, I like to use the word and ask for help. And that can even be at home. We can be out of balance and stressed out at home because, I don't know, we're packing for a trip and we're angry at our husband because he isn't emptying the dishwasher. Well, most likely his brain doesn't think like mine, but if I ask him to, he might. So,
Kim, I don't know what you're talking about. That never is a conversation in our family.
Well, I mean, and that's part of, like, if we rewind and we go back to where this all started, and I said I didn't realize how much I was addicted to drama and chaos. It was because part of my role was it fed my ego. It fed my daily dopamine to be the constant problem solver, right? And sometimes when we're in a leadership role, if you're talking about the example you gave of the woman that you talked to, where you're like, why are you doing this all? And you're acting like a solopreneur. You actually have help, right? It's probably because it feels good. It feels good when we can be the one that solves everything. And so you have to change your mindset around that it is okay to ask for help, and you can still be valued even though you're not doing it all. I just had this with one of my directors of operations that I coach, and she's with a financial company, and there's the financial advisor, and then she's the director of operations, and now they have 3 staff members that she holds accountable, and I'm super excited for them. I'm so excited for their growth. And we were having a conversation, and she was saying, I don't know what my value is anymore. And because she's not doing the dailies anymore. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, You are a leader of people. That's the hardest part about being in leadership, when we're not doing it all, but you're leading people, you're empowering people. Like, there is a gift as a leader to be able to inspire and empower others to grow, learn, and do their job. And so that can be part of the conversation as well.
God, this is good. I love this. This is really good conversation. So as you were talking, I started having to write down a couple of thoughts so I didn't forget them. What you remind me of is this ego piece, I think relates to, tell me what you think, an underlying need for safety and security. That if we're in control of something, at least we can pretend at least we're in control to be able to alleviate our worries for safety and security and ultimately even fear. And I think that that's part of it. You know, I think that's when you no longer have this addiction to getting stuff done and being in control, and you're on that vacation, you're 5 days in, you kind of go like, what is my value? What is my worth, to your point? Because I'm no longer the problem solver. I've sort of felt it at times. There's a little bit of period of fear, like, well, who the hell am I? You know, or people who are retired, that's when most of their health issues start to happen, right? Because their identity is no longer in the work that they do. They have to find value in something else. And then I sometimes ask this question of teams. I said, so how was conflict managed when you were a child? And how is that approach now influencing the way you deal with conflict as an adult in your teams? Another question could be, how was creating safety? What was your role in creating safety and security in your family as a kid? And are you still acting out those same patterns as an adult? Because I think at some point it goes back to some of these root cause situations that we're still playing out, and hence why it's so difficult to unpack and get past it.
Yeah.
We're dealing with years and years and years of training and hard paradigms to break.
Right. So true.
Wow.
That's why so much about what a lot of your guests talk about, and like I said, the most recent one that really resonated with me, and my whole forced slowdown, right?
Yeah.
is when we can take a pause and we can actually reflect. That's where we grow. That's where we can identify and heal and change and grow and, decide to become something different based on our past or our history or whatever it might be. We listen to a podcast, we read a book, and we're like, oh, that's a great idea, but we don't realize why we keep, following the same patterns and over and over again, because it's, in our brain from how we grew up. And so sometimes we just have to reflect about that and to make a decision to make a change, which is not easy, as we know. So.
All right. So, Kim, I am listening to this podcast. I'm driving my car. Okay. Another jerk just cut me off, but I'm paying attention. I'm listening. I don't want to have to go through a ski accident to get the lesson that you had just shared with us. What does a person do to pay attention to this conversation, this message around balance? How do we take a less dangerous approach to learning this lesson than you took? Sorry for being so blunt.
Yes. Well, I would say, first of all, it's definitely reflection time, whatever that means to you. Whether that's in your morning routine, if you have one, whether it's you designate a day a month, a half a day a month, whatever it might be. I don't know your schedule, whoever's listening. But unfortunately, that's what it is. In all the studying I've done, in all of the coaching that I've done, in all the training that I've had, the answers come from the slowdown, from the reflection, from asking, like you asked so many good questions, Dean. It's from asking or answering those questions, and without judgment. I think too, a lot of times when we're doing reflection time, whether we've received a journal that has journal prompts or whatever it might be, we read a book and it has, the questions at the end, is we can naturally go into judgment, or we stop the thought. We're like, oh, not me. And it's deciding what that looks like to you. And then where we started with the subject around balance is deciding what what that means to you and recognizing it. But again, we don't know when we're in it if we don't slow down and realize it, because we're here to live big lives. Like, there is no such thing as perfection. Like, the people who are listening to this, it is because they are growth minded. When you are growth minded and you know that you can continue to grow, to live and change and improve and learn from your failures, then that means we have to be open to the ideas of change and some of the pain that comes from the change.
Absolutely. There's an author that I really like, Harvard gal, Amy Edmondson, and she talks about how organizations are structured for execution. Now think about how that is a metaphor for individuals. Execution, I don't mean like you've been killed. I mean in getting things done.
Job.
Versus learning. We don't structure our companies for learning. We structure our companies for getting things done. And the irony, of course, when you read her work, which I happen to agree with, is that the more you create a system of reflection, of psychological safety, think about how this relates to an individual, not just your team, you actually learn more. You take that time, like you said, you schedule it. Or you listen to your body, you listen to your breathing. What's going on? What did I learn today? What did I learn, last night, yesterday? You constantly have a ritual around learning for yourself. Think about how that can also translate to a team, that you actually get more work done.
Yeah.
The irony is we execute more when we have more learning to be able to support that. We don't have to redo the work because the work was done right pretty close the first time versus having us to do a lot of trial and error. There's all sorts of stuff on this. So I think that your message is ironically not just about balance, but it's about getting stuff done through balance. Yeah. This is great. So Kim, I could talk to you all day.
Oh, I could talk to you too all day.
So why don't you just, we'll meet somewhere. We'll have a cup of coffee or something and whatever. If you're ever out in Bend, Oregon, look us up.
Okay.
In the meantime, how can people follow your great work, your books, your keynote speaking, and eventually your podcast that you will start up here soon?
Yes. So you can find me at kimrogne.com. You can find me on Instagram as my main platform, and that's just at Kim Rogne. And then you can get a free download from my For the Love of Self journal that gives you a 7-day reset. That is a lot about what we talked about, setting up your week for success, your mind shift activities and your end of the week activities at flowself.com, FLOself.com.
It's interesting. I had a podcast interview yesterday, and we kind of had a similar sort of theme as this one, but we kept coming back to this idea about having human experiences in a world in which things are becoming less human connected. And so I think what you're also saying is, let's return to what it is to be human by taking care of self, by having this reflection, all the things you just talked about. So thank you so much for, I know we had to reschedule to make this happen, and but I'm so glad that we did, and just keep up the good work.
Oh, well, you keep up the good work, Dean. I appreciate you, and this has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Leadivation with Dean Newlund. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com, or check the show notes. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. Transform your leadership success with Leadivation.